to the most crucial concept which was emerged after the Second World War is the emergence of two camps, that is the camp of USA and the camp of USSR. These two became the two power blocks So in order to maintain their position and in order to maintain their status and in order to control the other ideologies and to spread their ideologies, like USA represents the capitalism and democracy, whereas USSR represents socialism and communism. So the Cold War was initiated by these two nations and it was on its peak for the next 46 years, that is from 1945 to 1991 is known as the era of Cold War. But in actual reality, the Cold War was never fought as a hot war on air. It was fought by taking some sides. It was fought by standing on one side versus the other side, because it is not a war which was fought directly between USA and USSR. If USA and USSR would fight directly with each other, the world would end within a second. In order to gain and in order to maintain their status, the only thing is to spread their ideology and to prove that they are superior than the others. They fought when the incidents have arisen against them. Like for example, you can see it's not a real fight, and because of the Cold War, we have the loss of 20 million citizens other than the American or the Russian civilians. These all 20 million citizens are the members of the third world countries or the other group of countries where this Cold War has been fought. We have seen these incidents occurring in the issue of Vietnam War. In the previous lesson, we had discussed the Vietnam War, where the North Vietnam and South Vietnam, the North is supported by the US, whereas the South is supported by the USSR, where it fought with each other by supplying directly arms and the ammunition, and finally it resulted in nothing, just simply in a bad name coming to US and USSR, whereas it's an evident secret to everybody that clearly this war is fueled by the two superpowers. And moving on to Korea. Korea was again divided into North Korea and South Korea, where North Korea and South Korea is again adopted towards the communalism and towards the democratic setup, where again these two were fought with each other, so getting the support of the two superpower nations. Again they fought for many years. Even today North Korea and South Korea don't have good diplomatic relations as it was in the historical past. And moving on to Angola. Angola was occupied by the French colonies and later it was given freedom after the Second World War, and again it was destroyed by the Russian attack and US people. Again it was fueling the Cold War issue here. And moving on to Afghanistan, where initially Afghanistan was supported by USSR and later of certain years they moved against the USSR because it was taken over by the Taliban and they started to implement the Islamic State or theocratic society, where they forced everybody to follow the Islamic rules and regulations. In this way, the Cold War not only brought bad name for the two superpower nations, but also initiated and got huge loss for the common civilians who are the members of the third nations or the developing countries, where they could not fight or withstand against any decisions of the two superpower nations. In this way, it was not a easy thing to come out of this Cold War, but finally when USSR broke down in 1991 and emerged into Russia and several independent nations, the monotonous emergence of USA into superpower has made it clear, and USSR was not in the next ratio of the power blocks. So it brought end to the Cold War officially. But in the process of Cold War, we have again seen various strategies which are used by the two superpower nations. What are the two strategies that are used by the two superpower nations? We'll discuss now. Concept of Cold War, where the tactics which are used by the two superpower nations in order to control directly or indirectly from one side to the other side. What are the three major tactics which are used? There are many other tactics which are used by the superpower nations, but in actual reality we have three major tactics. One of them is the proxy war. The proxy war is a war which is initiated for countries which are fighting for an independence, would be supported and would be taken over to get against their colonial masters. It may be cited vice versa. Looking at the situation here, we have an examples to understand it very clearly. US government supported the anti-communist movements in Turkey and Greece. Actually, Turkey and Greece are following communism. So here it was supplied or supported by US for anti-communist movement. It shows that it is indirectly involving in against the communist movement. So it is a proxy war. Indirectly you initiate against the existing government to fight against them. That is called proxy war. Next situation is like Congo. Congo got independence. It's actually a Belgian colony. In 1960 it got independence, or it attained independence in 1960 after the Second World War, after a serious struggle made by the radical leader called Lumumba. This man Lumumba was a elected or emerged leader of Congo, but this man was behest killed by the Americans' most powerful agency, Central Investigation Agency, CIA agents. So it is like indirectly destroying the existing government. This is also a part of the proxy war. And moving on to the next example, in Angola, it was against the leadership which was fought. So here they could establish the support of Poland and USSR indirectly supporting here, and Cuba establishing a communist government in the Angola region. And now here we get the establishment of the leadership of the Communist Party supported by USSR, and in the same moment we have establishment of Fidel Castro taking over the leadership in Cuba, a truly communist setup against the American nations. Even America trying very sincerely to cut off them, but could not stop it, and they emerge as very strong leaders. Taking the initiative of Fidel Castro, we have another important leader emerging in the Latin American nations, Mr. Che Guevara, but Che Guevara was killed by the American agencies. So in this way the proxy war was indirectly cutting off against the ideologies, whatever we don't believe it. And moving on to the other example is in Chile, in America, where America was scared of expansion of communism in middle and the south of China. So in Chile, the elected representatives of the Communist Party, Mr. Allende, was coopted at by the military officials who are supported by US. In this way, US has done all the ways and whims whichever is necessary for them to provoke against communism. What happened for communism? How did the communists respond for this? Why Russia could not respond so seriously as could that of USA? What are the other changes that were brought up? What happened the stand of USSR in this moment? Is USSR successful at any point of time? We would check all the details now. The other side of the proxy war made by USSR. USSR was also not quite as that of USA. As USA was active, automatically it initiated USSR also to be active in the proxy war by here. See, in Germany, Hungary and Czechoslovakia, the friendly governments, the unfriendly governments of USSR were removed and the friendly governments were installed, for which they got a serious action or insatisfaction against the action of the China people, the Russian community from Germany, Hungary and the Czechoslovakian people, where they were upset with the stand of USSR. And in 1960, China started to distance itself from the stands of USSR, but finally USSR thought of controlling China, could not do anything, and it failed literally. And moving on to 1971, the Afghan issue. Afghan was fought by the two sides by support of USA and USSR were fighting indirectly on the issue of Afghan. As the Cold War went on for many years, it brought the USSR decided to take away its hands, and USA continued it. And when the Afghan was entering the hands of the Talibans were completely Islamic people or religious based people. They turned against USA, and in this way the Afghan issue turned bad name for or brought a bad impact for the USA. And moving on to the realities now, either it may be the USSR stand against of the existing government, or the USA standing against the existing government, or the existing anti-feeling of it. But in actual reality, the people or the soldiers of the third world nations only have suffered a lot than the armies of USA or USSR. This was a key initiative of proxy war, which was a huge loss for the people of the developing nations of the third world countries who were recently got independence or fighting for independence. Nearly 20 million people lost their lives in this proxy war issues of the Cold War. What are the military pacts that are made? How many categories of military pacts are there? What is the main ideology in making a military pact with one group of nations with the other group of nations? Let us find out all these details now.